You were off by this much because I have an opening video first. Welcome, everybody, to the Wannabes podcast. I'm your host, Luke Walters, with a very, very special guest. This is Terence Cover. Terence is a local indie filmmaker, artist, photographer. I mean, I guess it all goes in the same thing. With an extensive IMDb credit history. Holy crap, dude! I see, I almost did it. Starting in 2005 with an exercise in narcissism, all the way up to such wonderful films as Bong Fly, Detroit Ghostbusters, Gotham City Sirens. I can't wait to ask you about that one. Orion. There's gonna be some fun stories for that, I'm sure, because I've seen your I've seen your YouTube series. Selling Stupid Gay for Prey, my personal favorite, Guardia de Male 2, for reasons. And coming out soon, Carousel 2. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, having a good time?
Yeah, sure.
Very excited to have you on. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this again. This has been a long time coming.
No
So,
problem. The bribe.
I guess I guess I'll just start from the beginning, man. What made you want to get into filmmaking, particularly independent filmmaking? Because we both know that it kind of sucks, like, a lot sometimes. Um, so what did it? What lit the fire?
It was actually back in high school. I got to have the wonderful experience of my first heartbreak, and while dealing through that and the experiences of early undiagnosed depression, I went out one Valentine's Day and rented two movies, and one of those movies was Joe Dante's The Burbs. And while watching it, for that whole 90 minutes, I completely forgot about my ex and all of that stuff. And that's when I realized, like, movies could be kind of cool and make you like see other things and take you to another world or whatever and make you forget stuff. And I was like, I kind of want to do that. I kind of want to make those. Because prior to that, I wanted to be a sketch artist. I wanted to draw comics, and I wasn't any good at it, and was like really depressed about that. So seeing The Burbs inspired me to say, yes, I'd like to like, make movies. But then what really like lit the fire was reading Lloyd Kaufman's book, Make Your Own Damn Movie, and Everything I Needed to Know About Filmmaking and Learn from the Toxic Avenger. Like reading those two books made me realize I could actually do that. Like it's not just the multi-million dollar Hollywood stuff out there. Like there's indie films, there's people who are like one man crews, and if you just get out there and do it, eventually you can actually start making the stuff that represents what's in your head that you want to have like, made.
Well, good, because I
So
want to
those were the
ask
two
you about
things.
that real quick because I've seen I've seen Dambulance, I've seen um, an exercise in narcissism. I haven't seen Television Quest, but these are your films. These are your short films. These are actually your things. So I'm curious. Two things: why don't you direct more? And you have a very visual style. What are your influences, particularly on your visual style?
Well, yeah, like I said, I've only done three short films that are completely 100% mine that I wrote and directed and edited. Two of them I play all of the characters in as well, and then one I actually cast a cast and did that way. And the reason I don't do more, I've actually done a little bit more than that. I've directed several episodes of a web series called Suburban Heroes, and then I directed a couple of shorts that other people had written, but they weren't not my films per se. Um, I don't direct more just because I don't have more opportunities. Not a lot of people ask me to, and like as far as inspiration, I don't have like a pile of scripts of my own stuff just waiting to be made. Um, that's the only reason I made the three that I did, because those were three scripts I wrote right near the same time, and I just kind of sat on them until I felt confident that I could make them between working on other people's stuff and like gaining experience and knowledge and such. Um, Once I've shot those three, I'm now I'm out. So if I want to direct something else, I feel like I need to write something else, but I'm not a writer. So I lack that inspiration. Like I've been sitting on a feature film script for over 10 years. I've got 8 pages into it, and that's it. So it's not much of a feature yet. So until I finish that, I don't have anything of my own. That's the main reason I haven't directed anything else.
Man, I'll throw some
As far as
shirts away.
visual inspiration, I've always enjoyed visual artwork, paintings, and comic books and stuff, and so a lot of it comes from that. I've always found more experimental films interesting, not necessarily full experimental stuff like the stuff Dali did with some other folks. Like that's a little too weird, but some of the stuff that still kind of possesses a narrative, but is a bit experimental, like Dr. Caligari or now, of course, I'm going to draw a blank. But stuff along those lines, where there's a lot of weirdness, but there's still a story, and that's sort of the stuff that influences me more
Well, you
as
mentioned
far as my own style.
Toxic Avenger. I mean, do you lean more towards a trauma style, or is that just something that you just like watching?
I thoroughly enjoy watching the trauma style stuff, like the over the top nature, the weirdness, the mix of comedy and horror, those sorts of things. So trauma is very much in my blood as a creator. Um, but where was I going with that? Yeah, it's definitely an inspiration.
Uh huh.
But as far as like the stuff that I've made myself, I've never felt the need to push myself into that arena. It's more of an inspiration thing,
Hmm.
not necessarily something I desire to emulate.
Okay.
I've worked on a lot of films that are in that style, but I haven't made one myself. I dig it.
So you do not have access to my chat. Um, our
No.
very good friend Destructo Ducko is always the first one to make some kind of comment,
Oh, good.
and and her comment is lovingly, "That's why Terry usually just watches a mirror."
There you go. Says it all.
All right, so how did you get into? And I'm curious, do you put any thought into like I don't know, because you know a lot of people that are in the that are in the indie scene that are trying to get their projects off the ground. Like, do people come to you with scripts? Do people come to you with an idea? Or are you just like the guy that's just out there and people know that you're just pretty much ready to go, like to drop the hat? How do you usually get these roles?
Well, as I'm sure anybody who's ever looked into the idea of working in the film business knows, everything filmmaking wise, or really any art, is it's all about who you know.
Mm-hmm.
So getting opportunities, working on stuff, all of that, it just comes down to putting yourself out there and just talking to people. For me, my start was through film school. I went to the Motion Picture Institute of Michigan. Um, that's where I met everybody that started with me, like all the people I started working with. And then you just branch it out from there. Like you work on those projects. I also did a lot of like looking in the Metro Times or other Craigslist, stuff like that, where there's listings for people that want people to come work on movies. And you just reply to those and go see how that goes. Sometimes that's a terrible idea and it goes very poorly. But sometimes it works out.
Uh-huh.
The very first, actually, the very second one I worked on um, ended up being the feature film Heavy Mental, which got picked up and distributed by Troma. So, like, that's how I got into that scene and met all of those people in the Michigan area that are connected to Troma, was through that. The very first one I worked on was actually an ad I saw hanging up at a video store, and it turned out to be like some 16-year-old kid who was making his first movie, but I stuck with it and finished the thing with him, and nothing ever came of it, but it was an experience. He fed me a couple of times, so that was cool.
That that does tend to be kind of a reoccurring theme at this level. Is it's always a lot of I have an idea, let's do it, and then you'll be like, yeah, no, totally, let's do it, and then just nothing happens.
There is a lot of that.
So, all right, let's say you get offered 10 things, one of them goes through. Like, is there a certain frustration level that you got to deal with? I mean, do you ever get frustrated when stuff like that happens? You just like, hey, I'm here if you need me, whatever.
Oh, absolutely. And I try not to be a source of it, but I mean, for every film you see on my filmography, there's five more that I either started working on and then like it fizzled out, or it was just something we talked about and never happened. I used to work on a web series called Suburban Heroes, and that was a group of guys that I worked with that I had gone to film school with, and we were making that regularly. and we kept talking about what do we want to do next. Like we had several projects lined up that we wanted to do next, either in conjunction with Suburban Heroes or following Suburban Heroes. And for whatever reason, Suburban Heroes was the only thing we could ever actually get together and work on. And the rest of those things just never happened. But there's scripts lying around and it's unmade. And that is frustrating because sometimes it's like stuff where you're like, this could really be the thing. This could be the good thing. And then, like with any art form, if you sit on it, somebody else does it. So you go back and you'll see this thing and be like, I had that idea 10 years ago. We didn't do it.
You
So
have
yeah,
had, I mean, at least some level. I wouldn't say you definitely have not been unsuccessful. I mean, you've been working since 2005. So,
busy.
yeah, I mean, and having worked with you too, I can see why people want you on set. But for your first short, um, what, what was, because this was an MPI thesis, wasn't it?
Correct. My very first short was a mandatory thing to make in order to graduate from film school.
So, what exactly was the assignment and how did this whole thing come about? And how long did it take you to make it?
In order to graduate MPI, every student, at least at that time, they may or may not have changed the rules now. They are still operating despite having me in their roster.
I work across the street from it.
See? So, in order to graduate, you have to either write and direct and complete a short film or write a feature film, like complete a feature film script. At least that was the case at the time. And so, like I said, I'm not a writer, so my idea was to do a film. And in that film in particular, because I'm not a writer, I had a bunch of poems. Like I was into poetry for a while because every goth kid does that. Um, so I had those sitting around, and at one point, I had seen like music videos, but for poems on a Canadian cable channel that he just happened to catch at like 2 in the morning the night before flying out to go to Sundance. I was like, that's cool. I could do that because I have poems and I don't have to like write a story. I could just make something visual to go with those. And so that's how that came about. Writing it went pretty quick because I just kind of pulled it kind of literal from what was already there. It was actually two poems mashed together. But as far as actually filming, we just filmed over a weekend. Um, all of your cast and crew had to come from your fellow students at MPI, obviously. But at the time, I was still living in Ohio, but attending school up here in Michigan. So I was actually driving back and forth 7 hours a day, 3 days a week to attend. And then when I worked on everybody else's films, I had to drive up here and work on those. But when I was making mine, I said, you're all coming to Ohio. You're going to work on my film. So we shot it at my parents' house in their barn. And a barn is a great space to make a stage in. And so my woman, who's now my wife, and I, Sarah, built a stage there inside this barn and didn't really get permission from my uncle, who actually owned the barn. So he was a little annoyed when he tried to park his tractor, and there's this like 10 by 12, 3 foot high stage in where it's supposed to go. But it was only for a month. It was fine. So we filmed there over a couple of days. The first day we filmed the first half of it, and then we got rained out because a tornado came. And the thing about being inside a barn is, in this particular case, the roof was metal, and the tornado brought hail. So that was a little loud. And then it brought torrential rain, which washed all the cow manure through the barn and over the lights and cables and stuff. So that was gross. And everybody was really unhappy about being on my film shoot. But only one person got sick and went home. So that was the upside. And then we filmed the rest of it the next day, and everybody went home and complained about it.
I like those odds, man, because I figure in most independent stuff, like if it can go wrong, it will go wrong.
Exactly. And, I'm somebody who tries to plan things, so I thought I had planned for every contingency, but I hadn't checked the weather. So,
Dude, it's
always
always
check the
weather.
weather.
I mean, we were supposed to do this yesterday, but.
There you go. And then you lost power
Yeah,
because of the weather.
stuff goes down. I made a I made a brief comment to my dad too. I walked into the house because for whatever reason our grid over here is actual quite garbage, and the power does go out like if there's a little bit of wind, and it started to rain Tuesday, and I was like, hey man, better get the generator out, and he was like, shut up, it's not windy enough. It's like okay, and then sure enough, around like 7 o'clock at night, we both just hear a bang, and everything just went down. We're like, God, dude, this is so dumb. Um, but then it came back on, right? And so I was like, hey, around 11 o'clock, go, hey, the power's back on. And we were good that night. And then I'm talking to you all day. We're going to do this. Everything's good. We're ready to go. And then I pull into the driveway, and my dad's out there mad. I'm like, what's up? Power's out. Come on. So, yeah, that's just kind of how it goes. And that's just, like, and all I need for this is really a stable internet connection. And you can't see anybody in the chat, but they'll tell you I already have a hard enough problem with that. Honestly. All right, so I'm glad you brought that up about the barn because that is one of your videos or a topic of your video in your series on YouTube called Tales of Narcissism, and I love watching these. I really do. You're a really good storyteller. I really enjoy hearing you talk about these stories. But now, if you could please, obviously not with the same gusto that you put in your actual video, but can you just go over about the time that you went to try and steal some CDs to get laid?
Of all the videos, that's the one.
That's the one.
I First of all, I want to quantify this. I'm a really good storyteller when I have time to write out a script and don't have to memorize it.
Really? Yeah, that sounds. I'm not a
Every
writer.
single one of those
I'm not a
is
writer,
scripted.
but I'll write out a script, and I'm not even gonna bother to read it. Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
See, you get it.
Yeah, I'm
That's
with you. I'm
independent.
with you.
Right there.
I can't even like it's true though, because I have worked with you on something, and that was like we didn't have to read a script for that. We were told the day up what to do.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Briefly, the story of trying to steal a CD to get laid. Um, so, like, I was always a very shy child, but I also, as I mentioned, loved films and enjoyed hanging out at the video store every Sunday after church, from open to close. So I was one of those people, the ones that hang out the whole time and just talk to you all day. And as a retail worker, I now know is the most annoying thing in the world to have a customer who doesn't do anything except stand around to talk to you. Um, but at this video store, there were several young women who worked there, two of whom I found attractive, so I would occasionally ask them out unsuccessfully. But one was still very friendly. And one day she mentioned that my cousin, whom I absolutely cannot stand and go out of my way to avoid whenever possible, had stolen two CDs from her right before he moved back to Florida, where he's actually from. Um, I said, well, that's fine. My dad's going down there to deliver some stuff to them for his final move. I'll go along and grab them and bring them back to you. And she's like, oh, if you do that, I'll sleep with you. And I thought that was awesome because I'm 14 and a virgin. So I tell my dad, hey, I'll go down with you to Florida, and everybody's surprised because they know I don't like that part of the family. So I go down there, and I have to spend like 2 days with these people I can't stand. And the whole time, all I'm thinking is I need 5 minutes alone in my cousin's bedroom to find these two CDs and stick them in my bag. But anytime I get time alone, I can't find the CDs because I didn't know where he keeps them. He didn't have a tower. He didn't have like a shelf or anything where it's obvious. And then finally, I'm like, where are your CDs? Like, let's listen to some music. And he's like, oh, they're over here. And they're like in a bag, in a binder or something. So he pulls them out, and I see the two that I'm supposed to grab. So I'm like, okay, great. I know where they are. And he goes to sleep. I'll swipe them and stick them in my bag. But we ended up going to sleep late, and like I'm afraid to go grab him because he's going to wake up, and then I'm nervous about that. I just go over this plan in my head. Right before we leave, I'm going to say, oh, I forgot my bag, and go into the bedroom, grab the CDs, throw them in, and get out of there. And so I start going over this plan in my head at night and just over and over and over. And then finally the time comes where I get into the bedroom and I'm with the CDs and I'm alone. And then all of a sudden, all I can think is, I've made too big of a deal about this. As soon as they notice these are missing, my dad's going to get a phone call and it's going to be like, where are these CDs? Your son stole them, because who else would have done it? Because now they're gone and he was there. And I thought myself out of it, even though it was the simplest damn thing in the world to do. So I went home, and on Sunday I went to the video store and I said, I'm sorry, I didn't get them. I didn't get the CDs. And she was like, what are you talking about? And that was very sad. And then, of course, now 20 years later, I realized all I had to do was go to a store and buy buy another copy of each of those CDs. I could just gave her those. I didn't have to go through all the rest of that.
What were the CDs?
One was the Godzilla soundtrack of the 1990s Godzilla.
Yes.
And the other, now I don't remember. It's in the video though.
Yeah, it is
So
in the video.
There's a reason to watch the video to
Yeah.
find out what was the other CD.
I mean,
It was something stupid.
that CD is highly underrated, having both Green Day and Puff Daddy on the same CD. Amazing. Fantastic. With, I think, sampling, what is it, Aerosmith? I think he's sampling in that song.
Never in my life have I listened to either of those CDs.
Oh, dude, I'm a super Godzilla nerd. I don't even care. I just know things.
They're a sore spot for me now.
Really?
Yeah,
Why?
because they're connected to that whole debacle.
Come on, man. Giant monsters punching each other. That doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter.
Not in that movie.
That one we don't talk about, but the
Yeah,
other
exactly.
ones,
The other ones are awesome.
Okay.
The other movies are awesome.
All right, you made it sound like all of them, like it ruined all of it for you.
I just meant those two CDs
Okay.
have a sore spot in my heart.
All right.
Godzilla, I love.
Okay, all right,
Always have.
all right. You can come back on the show anytime you want
Thank you.
now. So I really wanted to bring up that one because you have other. I mean, there's other videos or other segments that you've done that you've talked about in your Tales of Narcissism that are very good, but they're usually just kind
Better
of like
told than that.
they're just kind of like downers. Like you're usually talking about something bad. And I was like, this one is hilarious. I mean, all your videos are good, but like talking about easily the worst experience that anybody could have on a film set, talking about your other experiences while filming. And so like, I'm not even gonna ask you that, because if you want to hear about or know Terry's worst experience on a film set, please go watch Tales of Narcissism on YouTube. But like, what's your best experience on a film set
Oh, wow.
so far?
Nobody's ever asked that. Generally, the best experience on a film set is whatever the last one I worked on was, because I enjoy working on movies. Like, whatever the last one was the one that made me happy and excited to be, involved in a film. So usually, that's what it was. Like, this last year, I've gotten to work on both FeasterSunday and Carousel 2, and both of which totally reminded me why I love making movies. Especially you're on set and in front of the camera and stuff, and so those were just a joy. FeasterSunday, we filmed it here locally with a bunch of people I hadn't worked with before, other than Brian, the director, and a couple other folks. So I got to meet new actors, and a lot of them were stage actors or improv actors. So that was awesome. And then I wasn't originally supposed to be the editor, but I ended up getting that job. And so getting to edit my first feature through that was also a great experience. Not at the time, like it was terrible to actually do because editing's hard. And I realized I didn't do that great on the sound recording, so I had to fix all that stuff. But I still got to finally do my first feature. So I felt involved with it and stuff, and so that was awesome. And then Carousel 2, that was the first film I got to leave the state and spend a week in Pittsburgh and work, and all I did was just eat and sleep and work on a movie, and that was awesome.
Yeah.
So like, those are the two most recent ones. So those are the two that are the best.
Well, that's awesome, and thank you for those great answers. But you were supposed to say Guardian Molly 2 and work with me.
Guardian of Molly 2 was the one I did before those two, and that was
No,
great too because
don't try and change it now.
no,
Don't try and
for
change
real.
it now.
There was times working on that movie where I was very happy and again excited to be like just involved in such an indie, completely independent film that is clearly a passion project of Kilby's, like the director. Like, he was definitely all about trying to get that thing made. And so it's always fun to be near that sort of passion and to be reminded that you can have that too when you work on your stuff. So that was cool too. I mean, like I said, the most recent one's the favorite, but not a lot of them are bad.
No, Guardia
But there's some
is
really bad.
Guardia
They're
is
just more
my
fun to talk
first
about.
Guardia is my first real experience on a set and working like that, and it was a lot of fun because it was really just Kilby, right? Like he did like 90% of it. I did like 5, and then that last 5% was probably him again. So like it was cool, and I mean it came out really good. He did an amazing job. If he'll ever get on here to talk about it, though, that would be lovely because he is watching. He's been making comments. Also,
Good for him.
Destructo Ducko says that your favorite film experience is meeting her,
Being who?
meeting Ashley.
Who?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
What are you talking about? Was that girl from Blood Orgy?
I'd see another one I haven't seen.
You just skipped all the ones with the cool titles.
There's reasons for that, really. Just given some of the subject matter and whatnot. But I've been waiting to ask you about this one. This blew my mind when I saw it because I went onto your IMDb page. First of all, I didn't think it was going to be as extensive. I figured I'm pretty sure I've seen this before, but for whatever reason, like now I'm like really looking at it and dissecting it for the show. And I see Gotham Sirens and you played the Riddler. How? How did you manage that one?
So that one was actually kind of fun. The director, Terrell, is somebody that I met at Motor City Comic Con. When I was working on Suburban Heroes, we used to get a booth there and try and sell our silly little DVDs for our web series and T-shirts and stuff. And I think the second year maybe we were there, I was walking down an aisle, and all of a sudden this guy yells, "Hey, Billy!" which is the name of my character from Suburban Heroes. And Billy's a common name, so I ignore it. And I walk a little further, and he's like, "Billy! Suburban Heroes." And like this is the first time I've ever been recognized in public by a stranger, so that was super exciting on its own. So I go back and it's this guy Terrell who has a table there himself, and he's at that point selling his comics, and he had one DVD that he'd made based on one of his comics, and we chatted for a bit, and then went our separate ways, but got together online. And, you know, just like I was saying with other stuff in indie filmmaking, it's all who you know. So when you meet people, you hold on to those connections. And a few years later, or a couple years later, he wants to make his first, like, more serious, like, more advanced short film. And he's like, "Hey, come on board and help me make it." So I ended up doing a little bit of lighting and a little bit of sound, and I played a character in Sieve was that one. Another one based on one of his stories. But eventually he started to get into the fan film community and started doing a series of films based on the DC Sirens characters. And once he got to that, I did help on one of them as like a boom operator or something for the Harley Quinn one, I think. But then eventually he did the one that you're talking about, and he just sent me a message and said, "Hey, I'd like to have you play the Riddler because I think you'd be good for it based on what you did in my other film, The Sieve." And so that's how I got to do that, and it was fun because I kind of got to design my own costume. He supplied the hat and the cane, and then I kind of came up with the rest. But he wouldn't let me do an imitation of any previous versions, so I was a little sad about that.
Who are you gonna go with though?
I kind of wanted to just mash it up and just make each line a reference to either Jim Carrey or Frank Gorshin. I think that would have been fun. But I got there, he was like, "No, you can't say riddle me this. You're forbidden."
Oh, come
Um,
on.
I know. But like when I got that role, I went back to the animated versions and I watched some of the episodes with the Riddler on the animated series, the couple of different versions that exist there. And so I ended up basing the character more on those because they're less over the top and more grounded, which is what he wanted.
That makes sense. Not a bad choice. But where did you film that one at?
We filmed that in Royal Oak. My
Wow.
scene in particular was actually filmed at the Silver Bullet Studios. Silver Bullet is a company I'd worked with on a bunch of other stuff.
Hmm.
And Terrell had gotten involved with Mike Hartman, who runs that,
Yeah.
and they had done some stuff together. And so we filmed there.
I'm glad you brought up the connections because that is like I think almost half the battle when it comes to this stuff. I mean, I met you when I worked at FYE for like 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and here we are. So I mean, that is just kind of how it works. You just don't. I mean, now I don't want to say don't say no to anybody, but you definitely want to keep people in your back pocket because you just never know.
Indie film is a very small community. Like filmmaking in general is kind of a small community, but indie film in particular is a very small community.
Yeah.
And every major city kind of has their groups.
Yeah.
And most of the groups intersect and there's a lot of incest, but in a good way.
Yeah.
So once you get out there and work on stuff, you meet people, and then through those people, you meet more people, and eventually, you know everybody, or at least most of, most of everybody, and then it's just a matter of staying active. Like, say yes every once in a while. Don't say yes to everything, but say yes every once in a while, so you're always out there doing something.
Yeah. Well, I
Because
mean,
it's very easy to get forgotten.
dude, I don't know, man, because I continue to just everywhere I go, if it comes up and somebody's in the scene or trying to get in the scene, you'd be surprised how many people I talk to, and like all you guys know each other, and it
Yeah.
it blows my mind every time. I'll be talking to somebody, I'll be like, yeah, I know this dude Terry, and be like Terry, and then I'll describe you and be like, yeah, that's the guy. So you in particular, you get around, my friend, and that's awesome. That's I'm not saying that in a bad way. Like people know who you
That's
are.
always been my reputation as someone who gets around.
Oh, hey man, it's working for you. I mean, film credits since 2005. You're doing something right. So you also are a photographer and a very talented one, I might add. And I
Thank
have
you.
been perusing your Facebook, which you have got a nice album in there, appropriate named "Means by Which I Occupy Myself on an Otherwise Productive Day," and it's mostly toy photography. So, what made you get into that?
That album is actually 100% toy photography. Um, I got into action figure photography because I had a large action figure collection and I needed to justify it as a 30-something-year-old man. So I figured I'll make some art. But how that actually started was way back when I was but a wee small lad. One day I decided to gather my action figures and try and recreate a comic book cover. And it was The Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe. Very simple. It's just a stack of dead bodies and the Punisher standing on top. So I gathered my figures, and I made a pile, and I stuck them on top, and I took a bunch of pictures, and they were all blurry, and you couldn't really tell what it was, but like I thought it was cool. And then I basically forgot about that for 20 years. And then one day I was like, man, I haven't done any film work in a while. I feel like a failure. I need to do something artistic to like get out of this funk. I have a lot of action figures. Did that thing that one time. I'll try it again. Um, so that's how I started that. I started just trying to recreate a few like simple comic book covers, and then eventually felt confident enough to do like my own compositions and stuff. And that's 10 years ago now. So doing that for a little while.
Well, out of all your photos, every Marvel one is definitely my favorite because that is my jam. The Marvel stuff, I love it.
I was a
Your
total
Agent
Marvel
Venoms and
kid
your
too.
Spider-Man ones, they're really good. And you just started to transition this into trading cards. Are you still doing that?
So I did a Kickstarter this year to do trading cards of those for a couple of reasons. One of which was whenever I do conventions, I sell my artwork at conventions. I do 11 by 14 prints,
Hmm.
and sometimes larger ones. But a lot of times people will be like, "Oh, these are really cool, but I don't have room to hang up more artwork." If you had something smaller, maybe. And eventually, at one of these art shows, a fellow artistic friend recommended to me, "Why don't you try trading cards? Like it's a good fit. You do comic book stuff. Trading cards usually overlap there." I was like, "Yeah, that's a cool idea, but I don't know how to do it." Um, but over a few years, I finally found a website that allowed you to do this. You could create custom trading cards. So I did the Kickstarter this year for that, and it was successful enough. I was able to do 2 series of them. So those have actually been made, and the backers have got them, and they've been mailed out, and I've started to have them at my shows now, which is kind of cool. Because as a child, I loved trading cards, um, especially baseball cards, even though I'm not athletic or a sports person at all. But then once I found out they did comic book trading cards, it's like, these are even better. So to finally get to like make my own is pretty awesome.
Now, is this something that you think you notice you're getting better as time goes on? Have you kind of figured out your style for stuff? Is it just, well, you said you were doing your own compositions, so like, do you have like a default lighting that you'll go to? Is there something that you're always trying to get in every photo? What's your process behind that?
Um, kind of go through phases. I'm I feel like I have gotten better and am improving. And periodically, I'll figure out something that really worked on one. I'll kind of stick with that for a little while, and that'll be kind of my style for 10 or 12 photos for a while, and then I'll figure out something else that I really like. Like when I first started, I was just doing basically 1 or 2 light sources, and I had a very simple one-inch shoot power shot. But it did have the adapter on it, so I could put a bigger lens on there if I wanted. Um, but just using that small one was good enough for me at the time. But as time has gone on, those setups have become more complicated, and I've added more lights, and then I've gotten better cameras as I've gone. But every once in a while, I'll still go back to like single source lighting or like 2 lights, and just keep it simple and kind of start over again. And that's kind of the fun of it because it can kind of change your style as you go.
Yeah.
But occasionally I'll learn new tricks. Like just last year I learned about artistic aerosol, which is a can of spray that creates fog without getting a fogger or dry ice or something. I had previously been using dry ice, which is
Oh
a pain
wow.
in the ass to use. But then I found this like spray in a can stuff, and I've been using that and like learning how to get the lighting you want with that kind of stuff. And I've done some stuff I'm really proud of now with that. So that's kind of been the style for the last few. Um, but it just keeps changing as I try to get better.
Now you hit up a lot of local conventions. Do you go anywhere outside of the state? Is that something? I mean, obviously COVID has been putting a damper on a bunch of stuff, but is that something that you try to do? Do you try and get out to as many as you can? Is it all local?
It kind of comes down to budget.
Okay.
Like, it's 2 things. It's budget, and it's what do people actually buy my work at? Because I've done some big shows, like in Michigan, some big comic conventions and stuff. And then whenever I do comic conventions, weirdly enough, it's not successful for me as far as like actually selling prints. Like everybody's always like, "Oh, these are cool. I like them," that kind of stuff. But as far as actual sales go, like comic conventions, I don't sell at. It's weird because you think it's a natural crossover.
Yeah.
So I've done that and I've learned from that. And then I've done like horror conventions as well. And I've gone out of the state to do a couple of those because I thought for sure those were where I was really going to find my audience because I started in comic book stuff and I've kind of transitioned more to horror movies and musicians. Um, so I've done a couple of those shows, but it's kind of the same thing. Like they don't really sell well at those. And what I've learned is the shows that I do best at are ones that are more art focused. Um, so like for a long time, the best show that I would do each year was actually the Detroit Independent Animation Festival.
Wow.
They would allow a couple of vendors to set up while they had their animation festival in another room. And that would be the one where I did the best at, which was odd, but kind of fits too. So mostly have kind of started focusing on art shows and smaller shows. But I have gone out of state to do some bigger shows and then regretted it afterwards because I didn't make any money. But they're always fun to do. It's cool to get to go to conventions elsewhere regardless.
So, just to go back to your film career real quick, on your IMDb, the film that is coming out, your next film, is Carousel 2. But above that is this little thing called The Monster Show, and it says that it's filming. I just wanted to know what's going on with that one.
So as far as like actually on the air here, I'm not sure how much I can say about it, other than it's been filming since 2015 or so. So as far as I know, it's not a thing that's ever actually going to get finished. But on the show, I played a character that's basically a Nosferatu vampire, and that gig was offered to me by the folks that run the film school that I went to. And they said, we'll pay you X number of dollars, but we need you to shave your head. That's a requirement for the character. And I've always had longer hair, like usually longer than this.
Luscious locks.
Yeah. So they thought it was going to be kind of a big deal. But what they didn't know is at the same time, I was kind of trying to figure out how to make my last short film, which is Television Quest. And one of the things I really wanted to do in Television Quest, where I play two characters, is I start out the film with long hair, and then I switch to a character that is bald. So the timing for that was perfect as far as working on the monster show and playing this Nosferatu character. But the problem with filming Television Quest is I didn't have a location. I needed it to be on a soundstage because in my head everything exists in a black box because I'm not really that creative. So to do that, I needed a soundstage, and I was like, okay, I'll do the monster show and I'll shave my head, wink, but I'll pass on the payment if you let me use your soundstage for one night so I can film a short film. They said, that's fine, we'll pay you anyway. You can do that anytime, you nut. You're a graduate. I was like, okay, cool. So that was the thing I asked for in my contract, was that I'd be allowed to use the soundstage and some of the equipment to film my short film where I needed to shave my head anyway. So it was like perfect as far as like all of that stuff lining up. And that's why I'm glad I did the monster show, even though nobody will ever see the one scene that I filmed in it.
Way to negotiate that one, man. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I felt like a real filmmaker.
So Kilby put a comment in here,
Oh,
and he was curious if you had ever thought about taking your prints to an actual comic store and seeing if they would possibly get picked up at a local comic shop.
My very second and third solo art show were both in comic shops. So I have had my artwork in a couple of comic shops for month-long art shows. And then I've done some one-day shows in a couple of comic shops as well. As far as like taking them in and having them there on consignment or something where they would sell the prints. I've considered it, but I haven't ever actually reached out to anyone to try it yet. But it's not a bad idea.
What else do you sell, or what else do you take with you when you go and you have a booth at a convention?
Well, right now it's all focused on my photography. So I take with me 2 portfolios that have a bunch of my prints in them, a bunch of larger framed prints that I set up. And then I also have, I've done 2 mini books, and then I have the trading cards and then buttons and stickers. And the books came about sort of the same way as the trading cards. Like, people said that they didn't have room for art, but they really liked it, so I thought, what if I compile it down into a book? And the first one I did was actually based on a series of photos I've done called Gumby's Long Strange Trip, Ins and Tears. In that the concept behind that is that Gumby, in the television series, he could walk into a book and enter the world of the book. So I thought, what if he got in the wrong bookshelf and then did a series based on that idea? And then obviously, because it's Gumby, it made sense that that would be my first book. So I compiled all the ones I had done at that point and put them into a book. And like, each page will have Gumby photo on one side and then like a little story about how he got into that situation on the other side. And then the second book I did is just my musician action figure photography. Um, on the back, I wrote that I do that because I can't play an instrument and I can't sing, and I don't have the stage presence to fake either of them. So this book functions as my tribute album. So that's how those two came about.
I don't know, man. I think you're selling yourself a little bit short on the stage presence. I'm just saying. So,
You've never seen me on a stage.
technically, I have, because I'm pretty sure you're on a stage in a scene in FeasterSunday.
Yes, I do have one brief scene on a
So
stage in there.
there you go.
But it's technically I was on a stage in an exercise in narcissism as well.
Oh, thank you. You're proving my point. Thank you. Please do the work for me. So, you have a nice little passion project that you've done, and I don't know how many years you've been doing this. How long have you been doing the festival?
Oh man, great research by this interviewer.
Yeah, you're welcome. I know you've been doing it as long as I've known you, so that's what like a good 5, 6 years, something like that. But
Which one are you referring to?
Devil's Night.
Devil's Night Gallery, I have been doing since 2013? No, 2016.
Oh, 10 years coming up, dude.
Well, 5 years. Halfway there.
Whatever.
So you actually have to go back to 2013 for how that starts, though, because in 2013, Mike Hartman and I co-founded Trauma Dance Detroit, which was an independent film festival centered around the themes of trauma films, The Toxic Avenger, Lloyd Kaufman, and all of that. And when we finished the first year, he turned the reins over to me and said, "This is your festival now. Do with it as you please." And so I was running that for a few years. And in 2016, as we were getting ready, about a week before we were going to do that year's show, my wife and I were sitting and watching TV, and we were watching the show Night Gallery by Rod Serling. And in that television series, Rod Serling comes out, and he introduces a painting and talks about it briefly, much like he would on Twilight Zone. And then you would enter the world of that painting, and there was a short film basically would play based on the painting. And while we're watching that, Sarah turned to me and she's like, "This would be like a good idea for an art show to do once." And I was like, "Yeah, that would be a good idea, but it'd be really hard to do. So, no, we're not going to do that. That's stupid. You're stupid." But
He is happily married.
still, to her. But while Trauma Dance Detroit was actually going on that year, I kept thinking about her idea. And I'm like, no, this actually is a really good idea. And I would so much more enjoy putting that show together than I do Trauma Dance Detroit. Because at that point in Trauma Dance Detroit, I kind of felt like I'd done what I wanted to do and was just doing it out of momentum because I felt like I had to for some reason. And so I actually, Sarah and I together put that first year together of Devil's Night Gallery. We did it in like 2 months because we wanted to make sure we did it in October. We rushed this show together. Like I did a real quick call for submissions and I got, I don't know, like 25 films submitted. So I just picked the 10 that were the best, that kind of fit the Rod Serling theme. But not necessarily were the best quality. It was just whatever I could get at that point because I was rushing this thing so quick. Not to knock the filmmakers. Anyone who completes a film is a genius and wonderful, and they're great. But like I just had to get what I could that fit. And then I got some of my artist friends that I know from doing art shows and stuff. I said, "Hey, do you want to do this crazy thing? We're going to do it in like 3 weeks or whatever." And they're like, "Yeah, let's do it." And so I got all these people to each create an original piece of art based on one of those films. And then at the event, I don a cheap suit and I do a terrible Rod Serling impersonation and I introduce the artwork and then we show the films. And that's essentially Devil's Night Gallery. And that first year, I didn't have enough artists, so I think Sarah did 4 of the paintings herself.
Oh wow.
And like even I did one. And it was very much just like a fun little labor of love thing. And nobody came out to it. It was us and 2 of the filmmakers and like the other artist. And that was it. But we all had fun doing it and we're like, we should do this again next year, but with like proper prep time and like put on a real show. And so we've been doing that since 2016. The first year we showed up to do the show the night of, and I got out of the car and I noticed I missed like 5 calls, and they're all from the venue. And I get out of my car at the venue, and one of Aubrey, who is one of the people that runs the venue, comes out. She's like, "We've been trying to get a hold of you. We have no power. Like the power's out." So this is something you can relate to, I'm sure.
Thank you.
So we arrived for the event the night of, and there's no power. And Doc, who's the other fellow who runs the event, the venue, was like, "I'm calling friends. I'm getting somebody to bring a generator out here. We're gonna do this thing no matter what." So we ended up running the show on a generator and a bunch of candles for lighting, which kind of made the whole thing perfect. And it was just a total guerrilla like show, and that kind of made it even more special. And so we've just been doing it since. And thankfully, they've all gone smoother than that one.
That was going to be my next question. If this has gotten easier for you, it's glad to hear that it
It,
has.
it has. And I've tried to expand it. In 2019, we expanded to do 2 shows. I did the Detroit show that we had been doing at the venue we've been doing it at. And then we also did a show in Pittsburgh. I went out to a movie theater there and did it there with Pittsburgh artists. And through a connection I had made at a convention, this woman named Angel, who knew a bunch of artists around there, was able to get all the artists for me and put the show together. And I just found the venue and showed up. And they all brought the art and we put on a show there. And it was kind of like the first show here, because a lot of stuff went wrong, but it was still like everybody was just happy to be there and do this fun little thing. And so we got to do it again, but in Pittsburgh. And then, of course, 2020 happens, and like all of that momentum goes away, and we did it online, but that was okay too, because it's based on a TV show anyway. So we're like, let's just make it like the TV show. And so I got a hold of the local public access channel, and we went there and we filmed it like a TV series, or like an episode of actual Night Gallery. And just set up the art and got a fog machine and black curtain and just made it look like Night Gallery.
That's awesome.
Even that was fun, and that's actually still viewable on my Vimeo channel.
So you obviously started this kind of like as a passion thing, and it still is. But is there like a big goal? Do you have an end game in mind? Is there anything that you want to hit within the next couple years?
Well, the scary thing is my big goal has always been to be able to do it in like a real theater, like a real like a movie palace kind of theater. Like I always felt like that would be the next step up, because it started in basically an art gallery, which is fitting for the event. But the other side of it is movies. So to do it in a real film theater would be awesome. And that's scary because this year that's what we're doing. We're having it at the Senate Theater in Detroit, which is basically a movie palace with a history and an organ and all of those things that you want, and the big stage and everything. So I'm kind of doing that goal. And so now the question is going to be, what do I do next? And I don't know. The problem I ran into with Trauma Dance Detroit was I did everything I wanted to do, and then I got bored with it. So I don't think that'll happen with this, because it's still kind of a fun thing to put on regardless of how we do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, my big goal was to get it into a movie theater, and that's what we're doing this year on October 30th. So it will actually be on Devil's Night for the first time ever as well. So there's a lot of milestones being hit with this year's event.
Yeah, how did you pull that off? Was that just by chance, or was it like, I want this date, here's this theater because other venue isn't available? Or was it just, hey, you got lucky?
Well, obviously the original plan was just to stick with the venue that we've been doing at because you feel a loyalty to the venue you've been doing at. But that venue closed last year.
Right.
And so it wasn't an option. And so I was like, well, I'll reach out to the small indie theaters that I know in the Detroit area, and we'll see which one will agree to do it for a rate I can afford. Um, because that's the biggest factor
Right.
is paying for the venue. Um, and one of the theaters I reached out to was the Senate Theater, and thankfully they actually already had plans for October 30th. They were going to show The Crow, and they were going to do an art show. And Nick, who is the guy that is my contact there, was like, "We were already planning this. This would actually be a perfect fit. Would you like to just kind of attach to that, and we'll make it a double feature kind of night?" I'm like, "Yes, please. That's awesome." So that's how that came about.
Nice. So, do you get all your submissions first? Do you select those first and then get into your artwork, or do you get artwork and then kind of be like? Because I've done the 48-hour film festival, and you show up and you basically pull your categories out of a hat. So do you like come up with the idea for art that you want first, and then tell filmmakers to do this, or is it give me your film and then I'll get some art?
Our process is the first thing I do is I do a call for entries.
Okay.
So I'll get submissions from everywhere, and then I personally by myself will sit down and watch them all. Thankfully, we don't usually get over 100, and they all have to be under 20 minutes to fit the theme of the show. And I put out a call specifically saying I'm looking for stuff that could be Serling-esque, something that fits horror or sci-fi but has a twist ending kind of thing, and I look for stuff that has a strong visual element because I know that there's going to be artists who have to then create a piece based on this thing. So I select usually 10 films that fit within my runtime, that fit those parameters, and then I contact artists that I've worked with before. I say, all right, who wants in this year? And then I get a list of artists, and I randomly assign each one a film, and then they have to watch that film and create a piece of art based on that. And it's not just paintings. Like on the TV series, it was almost always paintings. I think there were two sculptures, but mostly paintings. But we've had sculptures, we've had photography, we've had paintings, we've had all kinds of stuff. I really leave a freedom up to the artist to decide on how they want to represent the film. But the only thing I tell them is don't make a movie poster because that's not what we're going for. We want something that represents the spirit of the film, not advertises the film. And then once they get those art pieces together, we all meet at the venue, and usually the first time I see the art is at the show. Sometimes they'll send me pictures and say, "Hey, here's my piece for this year," but I will write my script for the introductions without having seen the art. Usually, the only thing I have to go on is the films as well, and then it all comes together the night of, sort of.
Now, is this like a competition? Because I mean, you're already asking the entrants to do some pretty challenging stuff, but is this something where you're like, here's the best, here's second, third, whatever? I mean, do you rank them, or is it just like we're showing everybody stuff and we're just celebrating the art?
It's all about the artwork and the spirit of Rod Serling and Night Gallery and independent film and independent artists. Like I personally have never had an interest in anything along the lines of like film competitions and such. So even when we were doing Trauma Dance, like we had no submission fees, we had no awards, no competitions, none of that sort of stuff. And I've carried that over for the most part to Devil's Night Gallery. I do have a small submission fee, but I do leave it free for Michigan filmmakers because I want the local guys to come out. But as far as like awards and competition, we don't do any of that sort of stuff.
That's still pretty cool, man. I mean, especially since you're given a lot of people that probably haven't done this their first real opportunity, or even people that do it all the time. You're still giving them another chance to showcase their art. That's always something that I admire when people do stuff like that. Do you have any plans to go back to Pittsburgh?
I'm always happy to go back to Pittsburgh. I actually like that city a lot. I've I've only really been there for extended periods of times twice. Once for the was sort of an indie film convention called Gross Fest. I had a table out there where I had my photography and didn't make any money. But I had a good time and met the people that I was then able to do um, Devil's Night Gallery with there. And then again for Carousel 2. But as far as like returning there to do Devil's Night Gallery again, I would love to, but I'd probably choose a different venue. There were a couple of snags that we had at the one we used. But I'm not planning to do it this year. This year I was actually planning to do Ohio, but that kind of fell through. So I am looking into the possibility of doing more shows outside of just the same area each year. I'd like to expand. I think there's opportunities there.
I do too. Sounds like it would be not not a tough sell either. I mean, you're coming in with all these opportunities. You're not really charging anybody anything. That's probably the biggest thing that'll get anybody to do anything, right?
Oh, for sure.
And then everybody gets to come and hang out and enjoy some really cool art. And I am very much looking forward to coming out this year because you're going to be screening my favorite film based off probably my favorite comic. Like I'm coming. It's happening. But yeah, when is Devil Knights Gallery this year?
Devil's Night Gallery is October 30th. Doors will be at 5:30. Devil's Night Gallery itself will begin at 6, and that will run till 7:30. There will be the Oregon intermission, and then the film that you're talking about, The Crow, will show, which is appropriate, being in Detroit and on Devil's Night. And that's at the Senate Theater, which is in Detroit proper.
And where can people get tickets, or is this like an at-the-door thing?
The Senate Theater has a ticket link on their website, and then on the Facebook page, event page, also has the link to the tickets, or you can buy them at the door as well.
So, Terry, it has been phenomenal talking to you. I appreciate it very much. You taking time out of your day to come here and speak with me and to my very, very illustrious audience. But I'm just curious now. I'm going to give you the floor. Like, what do you got going on right now? Are you working on anything? What's the next convention that you're going to be at? Obviously, you already talked about Devil's Night Gallery. Feel free to speak more about it if you would like. Just anything that you got going on right now.
Well, I've got 4 or 5 art show appearances coming up where I'll be doing my photography. You can find that info on my Facebook page for my photography, which is @figphotog. Just look that up on there. I'm sure you'll have links to this as well. And then obviously Devil's Night Gallery is the big thing at the end of the month. And then Carousel 2, I believe, just finished editing, and so that will be coming out soon. I know Steve will have links to purchase that once those are available, and I will obviously be sharing that as well. And then I will be filming the next film with you and Kilby coming up later this month. And that's what I got on my docket. And then, of course, my YouTube series, like, that's still there. I might do something with that again.
Actually, yeah, I was been meaning to ask you. Thank you. Like, where's the latest Tales of Narcissism, man?
I just need to take some time to write some more stuff. Like I said, I hate writing, but I can't tell a story without having something to read from because I'm terrible at it.
But you don't read it, though.
I do.
Do you read it, or do you just glance at it? Because you said you don't memorize it.
Those all teleprompter.
Oh, you're one of those guys.
Yeah.
Now I know what you're looking at.
Or the storytelling, it's a teleprompter. If I do a live storytelling thing, I just have the paper in front of me because I'm too nervous on a stage to look at the audience. So I'm just reading a paper.
I thought for sure you were just looking at the camera. Now I know. It's the freaking teleprompter.
I am looking at the camera because in front of the camera is the teleprompter.
Cheater.
Yes.
All right. So you can find me at LukeW306. That is for the Twitch, the Twitter, and the Instagram. Mostly just use the Instagram to promote my streaming. I don't know. I take pictures every once in a while. They're okay, I guess. Certainly nothing like my illustrious guest is doing. I don't really tweet unless it's to promote this stuff. And then, you guys see me shoot some stuff on a game every once in a while. But I need to get back into that and do it on a little more regular basis. And then, as Terence here mentioned, we will be working on a film together here in the next couple weeks with our good friend Brian Kilby. Super excited for that. I've been sitting around too much, man. I need more stuff to do. So like you said, I say yes to everything and then just wait. just hang out and see what happens. But dude, seriously, thank you so much for being on. This was a lot of fun. I hope you'll be on again in the future because I'm sure you're going to do a lot more stuff. And anytime you want to come on and promote Devil's Night Gallery, any of your photography, anytime you're going to be somewhere, or if you just want to actually talk about movies, dude, you're more than welcome to come on here and do it anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do want to plug one more thing.
Plug.
FeasterSunday. If you want to get a copy, you can get it from Brian Papandrea. He has his own web store on Store Envy. Or if you're local, come down to Found Sound in Ferndale, where we have copies for sale at 234 West 9 Mile. I promised my boss I'd mention that.
And you are, of course, the amazing editor of that film, and you have a pretty substantial role in there too.
A very small role in this.
I don't want to give it away, but I'm upset. I'm upset. I'll tell you about it off camera.
All right.
Thanks again very much, and thanks again everybody that came out and chatted. I'm actually very happy with the turnout that I got in chat. I didn't expect really anybody to say anything, so that was wonderful. Say hi to the locals. Well, the one that always watches the show just to give me shit. And then Kilby showed up, so yay. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you. My good friend Kirk the Kid, who probably dipped out after 10 minutes because he probably fell asleep, but that's okay. His view still counts. All right, if you make it 10 minutes, the view counts. I don't care. Yeah, and anybody else that tuned in and checked this out for 5 seconds to 5 minutes, I don't care. Or if you made it the whole way in this marathon, thank you so much. Thank you for chatting again. Tune in next week. Malignant comes out tomorrow, so that's probably what we're going to cover next week, because I know that's all I'm really going to want to talk about. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good night. And for Morgan, I will say, don't forget the popcorn. That's her little catchphrase. I hate it, but I'll say it anyway. And yeah, have a good night. See you next week.
Bye.